My name is Lauren, and I'm 34 years old. People often say betrayal feels like a knife in the back, but for me, it felt more like the ground splitting open beneath my feet, sudden, cruel, leaving me free falling with no one to catch me. It was nearly midnight when the phone buzzed on my nightstand. I was tangled in sheets, half asleep, believing my husband Daniel was still away on his business trip in New York. He'd left 3 days earlier, kissed me at the airport, and sent little updates to keep me calm, photos of hotel lobbies, cocktails, and text messages that read, "Meetings are intense. Miss you already." But when I picked up the phone that night, it wasn't him calling. It was my brother Michael, who runs a boutique luxury resort in Hawaii. His voice came through sharp, too sharp for midnight. "Lauren, I hate to wake you, but I have to ask, where's Daniel?" I blinked in confusion. "He's in New York. Business conference. Why?" There was silence for half a second, and then he said words that made my whole body go cold. "No, Lauren. He's not. He checked into my hotel 3 hours ago, with another woman. And he's using your card." The sheet slipped off me as I sat upright, heart pounding so hard it drowned out everything else. My hands trembled against the phone. "What does she look like?" I whispered. "Tall, brunette, smiling like she owns the place. They booked the ocean view suite, together." I wanted to believe there was some mistake, but deep inside I already knew. The late nights, the sudden emergency trips, the way Daniel had grown colder each time I asked about his coworker. He had been planting the seeds for months. Michael's voice softened. "You're not the first person he's fooled, but this time you've got me. If you want proof, I'll get it." And that's when something inside me broke and hardened all at once. My voice was steady, though my hands shook. "Good, because I don't want to just confront him, I want to destroy him." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room, staring at the blank TV screen while memories unraveled in my mind, like a cruel movie I didn't buy a ticket for. The anniversaries, the dinners, the promises he made when he said I was his forever. They all turned to ash in an instant. By sunrise, Michael had already sent me photos my husband at the hotel bar with her laughing over drinks, walking hand in hand near the infinity pool, kissing her outside the very elevator where he and I had once stolen a kiss during our honeymoon. The betrayal wasn't just a knife, it was salt poured deep into the wound. But instead of crying, I felt something sharper resolve. Michael called again that morning. He's racked up over $2,000 already. Spa trips, room service, shopping sprees, all on your card. Want me to shut him down? I paced by the window, the city still asleep beneath me. No. Let him keep spending. The more rope he takes, the easier it will be to hang him with it. Michael exhaled, almost laughing. "You're serious about this?" "Dead serious," I said, and I meant it. The next day, I made the first move. I called the bank and froze the card. Told them it was stolen, which wasn't a lie. Daniel had stolen more than my money. He had stolen years of trust, love, and loyalty. By noon, Michael texted me. He just tried to pay for poolside drinks. Declined. He's panicking. I could picture it perfectly. Daniel trying to charm his way out of it, that fake smile plastered across his face. Maybe blaming the waiter, maybe pretending it was just a glitch. But when the front desk told him all charges were frozen, I knew the mask would begin to crack. An hour later, my phone lit up. "Daniel." For the first time since this began, I didn't feel grief. I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt control. I answered, my voice calm. "Hey, sweetheart." His tone was tight, strained. "Lauren, thank God. Something's wrong with the card. Everything's being declined. You need to call the bank right now." "Oh," I said lightly. "That's strange. Weren't you in New York?" Silence. Then a stammer. "What?" "You told me you were in New York for a business conference. But Michael says hi, by the way. He says you look great in the presidential suite. Shame about the company." There was a pause, and then his voice cracked. You knew." "I know everything, Daniel. I know where you are. I know who you're with. And I know you've been using my money to fund your little beachside fantasy." I could hear the panic rising. "It's not what it looks like, I swear. Just please call the bank. My card isn't working either. We're stuck here." I smiled to myself, letting the silence linger. Wow. Stranded in paradise with your affair partner and no way to pay. What a shame. He begged then. His voice dropped, frantic, desperate. But I ended the call with one final line. "You made your bed, Daniel. Now lie in it." And I hung up. That night, Michael sent me another photo. My husband once so smug sitting alone on the edge of the hotel fountain, his mistress nowhere in sight, his phone nearly dead, his smile completely gone. And for the first time in years, I felt free. The days that followed were surreal. I should have been shattered, curled up on the floor of my apartment, drowning in tears. But instead, I found myself moving with a strange, deliberate calm, like a storm had ripped through me and left behind only clarity. I still hadn't told Daniel I was filing for divorce, but in my mind the marriage was already ashes. Michael kept me updated from Hawaii. He sent photos discreetly captured by his staff. Daniel pacing the lobby, red-faced, snapping at the front desk when they refused to extend his line of credit. The woman he'd brought with him, her name was Vanessa, apparently didn't stick around long. After the second day without room service or shopping, she stormed out, dragging her suitcase and leaving Daniel sitting alone by the pool, nursing a warm beer like it could save him. Michael's texts became almost humorous. "Your husband is currently arguing with a cabana boy about towel service. Do you want me to throw him out?" "Not yet," I replied. "Let him stew." The image of Daniel, once so smooth, so smug, unraveling under the weight of his lies, was intoxicating. But beneath the satisfaction was a gnawing ache. This was the man I had built a life with, the man I had defended when friends whispered doubts, the man I once dreamed of growing old beside. To see him fall wasn't just revenge, it was grief too. That grief sharpened into rage when I dug deeper. I pulled phone records, emails, travel receipts. What I found made my stomach twist. This wasn't a one-time betrayal. It had been happening for months. Trips that were for work were weekends away with her. Dinners that I thought were business meetings were candlelit dates across town. And worst of all, he had used my name and my credit to book most of it. The humiliation stung worse than the betrayal. He hadn't just cheated on me, he'd stolen from me, mocked me, used me as the unwitting sponsor of his affair. I called my lawyer that afternoon. "I want everything documented," I told her. "Every dollar he spent, every lie he told. I want this divorce to cut clean and I want him exposed." She sighed softly, but I heard approval in her voice. "Then we'll go for financial misconduct. With the evidence you have, he won't just lose you, he'll lose almost everything." That night, Daniel finally flew back. I knew the moment he landed because my phone exploded with calls and messages. "Lauren, please, let's talk. Don't do this over the phone, I can explain." I ignored every one of them. By the time he arrived at our apartment, I had already changed the locks. When he tried to buzz up, I answered through the intercom, my voice cool. "You don't live here anymore." "Lauren, please," he begged. "It was a mistake, she meant nothing." "You mean everything." I laughed bitterly. "Mistakes don't last months, Daniel. Mistakes don't drain bank accounts. Mistakes don't book the same hotel where we honeymooned and replace me with someone else." He cursed under his breath. "You set me up. You wanted me to fail." I pressed the button, cutting him off mid-sentence. Let him yell at the locked door. Let the neighbors hear his desperation. I owed him nothing anymore. But still, when I crawled into bed that night, the tears finally came. Not because I missed him, but because of what I had lost, the years, the trust, the love that turned out to be hollow. I wept for the woman I had been before, the woman who believed in him, who believed in forever. Morning came, and with it, a new determination. I wasn't going to let my story end with betrayal. I was going to reclaim it. Michael called again. You know, he tried to rebook under another name. Used his work email this time. My staff flagged it immediately. I smiled for the first time in days. Good, let him keep trying. Every failure is just another reminder he doesn't get to win. By the end of the week, my lawyer had filed the papers. Daniel was served at his office in front of his colleagues. The look on his face when he realized the life he built on lies was collapsing. I didn't have to see it. Just knowing it happened was enough. But even then, I knew my battle wasn't over. Divorce was one thing, healing was another. And the truth was, a part of me still carried that night Michael's phone call, the photos of Daniel kissing her by the pool, the smirk on her face like she'd won a prize. I wanted to scream at her, at him, at the universe, but instead I poured all of that fury into resolve. I was going to take back my life piece by piece until there was nothing left of him in it. I thought filing the papers would be the last earthquake. But grief keeps aftershocks you don't see coming. 3 nights after Daniel was served, I woke to a knock. Not the frantic pounding of a man who'd lost access to the only life he knew, this was gentler, familiar. I pulled open the door to find my mother on the threshold, clutching her cardigan like a shield. She smelled like chamomile and old perfume, the scent of bedtime stories and bandaged knees. "Baby," she said, eyes shining. "I heard. I came as soon as I could." I folded into her body and felt 16 again. For a minute, I let myself be held. For a minute, I let my chest unclench. She made tea like she always did in a crisis, hands moving by muscle memory kettle mugs. Honey, the chipped spoon we never threw out. She sat across from me at the wobbly kitchen table and asked for the short version. I gave her the long one. The midnight call. The photos. Hawaii. My brother's quiet fury. The card freeze. The intercom. The papers. I watched the story push through her face, tightening her jaw, softening her eyes. When I finished, she stared into her cup. I wish I could say I'm surprised. The words hit the table like a stone dropped in a still pond. "What do you mean?" My voice wasn't angry yet, just careful. She didn't answer right away. She pressed her fingers to the rim of the mug as if warming a truth. "After your first anniversary," she said softly, "I found a charge on your joint statement for a dinner at Mirabelle. 2 entrees, 2 desserts, 1 bottle of that wine you can't pronounce." I asked him. He laughed and said it was a client that you wouldn't understand the industry. I let it go. I told myself I was being overprotective. "I didn't tell you." Heat crept up my neck. "You knew," I whispered. "You suspected and you said nothing." Tears sprang to her eyes. "I was afraid, Lauren. I didn't want to blow up your marriage if I was wrong. I remember how hard the divorce was on you when your father left. I didn't want to be the mother who comes in swinging and ruins things. So I told myself love needs room. I'm sorry." I stared at the steam winding off the tea, like it could draw a map out of this. Betrayal from a husband slices you open. Betrayal from a mother slips a blade under the scar tissue. I wasn't angry at her the way I was at Daniel. The emotion was messier, heavier. "Room for love," I said, "can't become room for lies." She cried quietly. I didn't move to wipe her tears. I let them sit between us like weather. When she finally left, the apartment felt hollow like a stage after the actors have bowed. I stood in the doorway, my hand on the frame, and realized the next thing I needed wasn't another freeze or file or subpoena. It was a reckoning. Not just with Daniel, but with the versions of myself that kept tolerating smaller cuts because I feared the deep one. In the morning, I booked a flight to Hawaii. Michael answered on the first ring. "You sure?" he asked. "I'm done being a voice on the other end of a phone," I said. "I want to stand where he stood and breathe where he lied. I want my feet on the ground he thought was his." Michael met me curbside with a hug that cracked something in me open and let the light in. He smelled like sea salt and fresh linen. "I've got a room for you overlooking the cove," he said. "And I've kept everything you might need." By everything he meant a neat, awful folder. Itemized charges signed in Daniel's looping hand. Comp prints from security footage. Elevator embraces fingers, linked by the pool railing. The shape of a man who once studied my face like scripture, now studying someone else's, as if it were the original text. Tucked behind it all, a single sheet Michael had almost hidden. A transfer from our joint savings to a Shell LLC. The beneficiary's name made my stomach lurch. Carlton Holdings. I knew the name. It was the family office managed by my uncle on my father's side, the same uncle who had called my father a coward for leaving, the same uncle who'd kept the last of my father's inheritance in a trust until you're ready. Daniel had found a way to petition for temporary liquidity from it, citing marriage and household needs 2 months before our supposed work trip to Napa. "Mike," I said, my voice thin, "he used Dad's legacy." Michael's mouth flattened. "He used you. The rest is paperwork." He hesitated, then added, "Uncle Ron signed off." "Small disbursement," said Daniel, "made a good case. Family secrets don't explode. They sink." I felt mine slide under my ribs and settle there like a stone at the bottom of a lake. Every betrayal was braided husband-uncle, the whole delicate web of trust that was supposed to protect me. "Do you want to confront him?" Michael asked. "He's back. Checked in this morning, alone." The ocean outside my window breathed in slow, deep pulls like a living thing. I thought of the girl who accepted explanations to keep the peace, the woman who froze cards and filed papers, the daughter who swallowed doubts to keep love intact, the sister who answered the midnight call. Yes, I said, but on my terms. We chose the lounge at golden hour when the sun melted into the horizon and made everyone softer. Michael arranged it so quietly that I'm still not sure how he did it. An empty corner, a discreet camera, a manager on standby. Daniel walked in wearing the same body I knew, and the same smile I no longer did. He spotted me and paused as if choreographing his face into contrition. "Lauren," he said, hands spread in innocence, "you flew all this way to talk. That means something. We can fix this." I didn't stand. I didn't offer him a seat. I slid the folder across the table. "That's your handwriting on the bar tabs, your face on the camera, your signature on the transfer request from my father's trust. You didn't just cheat Daniel, you colonized my life. You set up a colony on land that wasn't yours and flew a flag with my name on it." He glanced at the first pages, then flipped to the back, eyes snagging on Carlton Holdings. Panic flashed and was gone. "It was a loan," he said quickly. "For us. For our future." Your uncle agreed. "My uncle doesn't own my future," I said, calm as the tide. "Neither do you." His voice started to fray. "You're being dramatic. I made mistakes, but—" "Stop," I said, and the word surprised even me with its power. "He did. You think the worst thing you did was sleep with a woman in a hotel. It wasn't. The worst thing you did was make me doubt myself every time a seam came loose. You stitched your lies with my trust and called the pattern marriage." He tried to laugh. It came out like a cough. "So what now? You bankrupt me. You drag my name through court. You want revenge? Take it. I'll survive." I leaned forward. "Not cruel, not kind, just done. Not revenge, consequence. There's a difference. Revenge centers you. Consequence centers truth." I tapped the folder. "This is the truth. And tomorrow morning my attorney will file for emergency relief to claw back every dollar you siphoned, including the trust disbursement. You will repay it with interest. You will sign a statement of financial misconduct, and you will not call me again." He looked past me, searching for a witness, a savior, a softer version of me he could still manipulate. There was no one. The sun kissed the sea and went under. When he finally spoke, his voice was small. "If I sign, will you stay?" I stood. "No, that's the consequence." I walked out before he could answer. The air outside was velvet and salt. Michael was waiting by the railing, hands tucked into his pockets. He searched my face like only a sibling can. "You good?" "I will be," I said. "I think good is a choice you make every day. Today I chose it." That night, I slept with the sliding door cracked open and let the ocean teach me how to leave and return again and again without apology. In the morning, a voicemail from my uncle waited. He started with excuses and ended with a confession. Daniel had charmed him, said all the right words, wore all the right suits. "I'm sorry, Lauren," he finished. "I forgot you were the one who earned the right to decide." I didn't call him back. Some lessons arrive only after silence. I signed papers by noon. Daniel signed his by 2. When I boarded the red-eye home, I watched the island shrink to a dark jewel set in black water and felt something heavy unhook inside me. I hadn't repaired the past. I had cut it clean. And somewhere in the distance I could feel the climax building, the last room I had to walk into. The last name I had to say out loud, the final secret that would stop being a secret the moment I chose to tell it. Flying home felt different this time. I wasn't returning as the woman Daniel had broken. I was returning as the woman who had faced him, forced the truth out, and walked away unshaken. But as the plane cut through the clouds, I couldn't shake the weight of my uncle's voicemail. His voice trembled with guilt, but it wasn't just about money. There was something else, something long buried. When I landed, my mother was waiting at the curb. Her face looked softer, like she'd been carrying her own storm these past weeks. She hugged me tight, whispering, "I'm proud of you." But when she pulled back, her eyes darted away like there was more she wanted to say and didn't know how. We drove in silence until she finally spoke. "Your uncle called me." My grip tightened on the steering wheel. "What did he say?" "That he should have told us years ago. That Daniel wasn't the only one who manipulated trust." Her voice cracked, and suddenly the puzzle pieces I'd been ignoring snapped together. The trust, the inheritance, The way Uncle Ron always insisted it was for emergencies, doled out in small, controlled amounts. I pulled the car to the side of the road. Mom, what do you know? She wrung her hands in her lap like a child. After your father left, Ron stepped in. He said he'd protect us. But he told me if I let you manage the money directly, you'd waste it chasing dreams. So I signed papers. I gave him control. Her eyes brimmed with tears. I thought I was protecting you. I didn't realize I was keeping you powerless. I sat in stunned silence, the truth spreading through me like wildfire. All these years, I thought my limitations were my own fault. I thought I wasn't ready, wasn't capable. But it wasn't that. It was stolen agency cloaked as protection. My uncle had tied my hands, and my mother had let him. I built my life on scraps I whispered more to myself than to her, and they called it love. She reached for me, but I pulled away. The wound was too fresh. You let him make me small, Mom. And Daniel just finished what Ron started. The car was quiet, only the sound of passing traffic filling the space. For once, my mother didn't argue. She just wept quietly, and I drove us home. That night, I couldn't sleep. Betrayal is loud in the dark, louder than in daylight. I kept seeing Daniel's smirk, my uncle's signature, my mother's tearful confession. It felt like my whole life had been a stage play where everyone else knew the script but me. So I made a decision. If they wouldn't give me the truth, I would take it. The next morning, I marched into my uncle's office. The receptionist blinked in surprise when I said my name. He's not expecting. I cut her off, striding past. Ron looked up from behind his mahogany desk, his expression somewhere between annoyance and guilt. Lauren. I was going to call. I dropped a folder of bank statements onto his desk. Don't bother. I know. He sighed, leaning back. I did what I thought was best. Your father left chaos. I kept it in order. Order, my laugh was hollow. You turned my future into your personal leash. You decided what I was worth, what I was allowed, what I could dream. His face hardened. You weren't ready. You would have thrown it away on some naive idea. You needed structure. No, I said, my voice steady. You needed control. And you used my father's absence as your excuse. I slid another paper across the desk, this one from my lawyer. I'm filing to take back full ownership of the trust. Every cent. Every asset. You'll sign over control, or you'll explain to a judge why you siphoned funds under the guise of family protection. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in his eyes. He opened his mouth to argue, then shut it again. He knew I wasn't bluffing. You've changed, he muttered. No, I said. I've stopped apologizing. I stood turned on my heel and left without another word. Outside, the sky was gray, heavy with rain, but I felt lighter than I had in years. The chains I didn't even know I'd been dragging had finally broken. That evening, I called Michael. He answered on the first ring as always. It's done, I said simply. Good, he replied. Then maybe now you can start living for you. I sat by the window as the first drops of rain tapped against the glass, watching the city blur. For the first time, I believed him. The rain poured all night, a steady percussion against my window, as if the world was washing itself clean. I sat awake with a journal in my lap, something I hadn't touched in years. Words spilled out of me like water breaking through a dam, memories, wounds, questions I had swallowed too long. By the time the sun rose, my hand ached, but my chest felt lighter. Writing it down made it real, but it also made it survivable. Daniel tried calling again that morning. 30 missed calls stacked on my screen like a desperate monument. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The papers were already in motion, his lies already unraveling in court filings. Every voicemail was the same, begging, bargaining, blaming. He cycled through them like a man drowning in the consequences he thought he'd never face. But the truth, I didn't feel like drowning anymore. I felt like swimming. My uncle signed over the trust within the week. The lawyers confirmed it, every cent, every decision now belonged to me. I stared at the documents for a long time before signing my pen, trembling not with fear, but with power reclaimed. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was about finally being the author of my own life. No husband forging my signature, no uncle doling out my worth, no mother deciding what truths I was strong enough to handle, just me. One evening I walked to the shoreline, the waves foaming white against the rocks. I thought about all the versions of myself that had led me here, the hopeful girl who believed in forever, the wife who ignored the cracks, the daughter who trusted silence, the sister who answered the midnight call. I wanted to hold each of them, thank them for surviving long enough to get me here. Michael called while I watched the horizon. His voice was soft, steady. "How are you holding up?" "I'm not holding anymore," I said. "I'm letting go." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "That's the bravest thing you've ever done." And I believed him. The weeks turned into months, and slowly the ache began to dull. The world didn't look the same, but maybe it wasn't supposed to. Maybe betrayal doesn't just burn bridges, it builds new paths. I poured myself into projects I had once been too afraid to start. I traveled alone not to escape, but to arrive. I let myself laugh again, not the brittle laugh I used to cover pain, but the kind that came from somewhere honest. One afternoon, as I packed away the last of Daniel's belongings into boxes marked for donation, I found an old photo album. Our wedding photos. His smile beamed at me from glossy paper, his hands clasped around mine. For a moment, the old grief surged, but then I looked closer. My smile was different, tight, cautious, almost pleading. Even then, part of me must have known. I closed the album gently and slid it onto the donation pile. That chapter wasn't mine anymore. That night, I lit a single candle and sat by the window, the city humming below. I whispered to myself, not as a prayer, but as a promise: I am not nobody. I am not what they made me believe. I am enough, and I am free. And for the first time, the words didn't feel like defiance. They felt like truth. So if you're listening to this, if you've carried betrayal in your chest like a stone you can't put down, hear me. The people who break you are not the ones who define you. You do. Their lies, their secrets, their cruelty, they're not the end of your story. They're just the jagged beginning of a new one you get to write. Thank you for hearing mine. If it touched you, if you've walked through your own storm and found pieces of yourself in my words, I ask you to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, subscribe for more stories of resilience, and leave a comment. Tell me about the battles you faced. Your story might be the light someone else needs.